Good afternoon. It's 6:03 p.m. on Tuesday, April 8th for the regular April meeting of the Groton Board of Education Policy Committee. I note that in addition to, wait a second, Ian is here. Ian, could I just see your face for a second? I've done this with everybody. I want to be sure everybody's here and participating. You can turn it off in a minute. Thank you, Ian. Leave it on or not as you want. Okay, so I've called the meeting to order. I would like to ask for a review of the minutes of the meeting of March 11th. Does anybody have any comments or wish to make a motion? Hearing no comments, I'll ask for a motion to adopt the minutes of the meeting of March 11th. Do I hear a motion?
So moved, Thomas.
Thomas. Andrea, would you like to second the motion to adopt the minutes of the last meeting? Can you hear me, Andrea? Somebody else want to see if it's maybe my microphone? Andrea, can you hear me?
Your mic's working, ma'am. I can hear
I
you.
know my mic's working, but Andrea's is. Kate, would you give Andrea a phone call and see if you can help her?
No, I just realized that there was a little message up there that I was supposed to click on, and I didn't.
Okay, great. So did you want to second the motion to adopt the minutes of the March 11th meeting?
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the minutes? Hearing none, I'll ask for a vote. All those in favor of adopting the minutes of March 11th meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Ian, were you voting?
Yeah, that's affirmative.
Okay, so it's adopted 3-0. We're going to move now to the evaluation of coaches. For the benefit of, I mean, I know I've shared this with our committee members, but for the benefit of the public, we had an initial proposal submitted by the administration through Mr. Romano, and I wrote him a letter asking for some clarifications. These were included in his clarifications were included in your packet, and I'd like to thank you, Mr. Romano, for a very quick response. It's truly appreciated.
Thank you.
So, have you read that? Would somebody like to move the evaluations for the purposes of discussion?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second, Thomas.
Thank you. Motion by Ackerman, second by Thomas. Okay. I'll open the floor for discussion. Well, actually, why don't I give the floor to Mr. Romano for a moment? If there's no objection from my colleagues, I'll let Mr. Romano see if you can make a very brief overview for the benefit of the public, and then I'll ask for comments.
Yep. So coaching evaluations, just as a broad scope, are done annually with all our coaches, paid coaches, varsity, JV, freshman, whatever the level is. Some of the things that occur during those are observations, communication with the coaches, which is constant during the season. And then obviously informal observations that are happening, whether it be practices or games, where I'm observing coaches, coaching kids, displaying sportsmanship, all those types of things that we kind of look for in a coach, as well as, some of the administrative side of it, whether it's paperwork, making sure kids are, their physicals and all that stuff are up to date, which we provide all that information to them. Trying to think what else. Any conferences or other workshops that they attend, we obviously look for those, always looking for bettering themselves or whatever it may be. So that's the kind of the administrative side. The planning and preparation side. Are they coming with practice plans? Do they have an agenda? What does that look like? Also about, ordering equipment and those types of things. And then in-season expectations, more about the coaching side of it, their performances, how they're interacting with kids, officials, other teams. Again, like I said, displaying sportsmanship, how they are, public relations, making sure that they're following through that aspect of it. And then obviously the postseason part where I meet with every coach, head coach, and go through their evaluation with them. And then, they meet with their assistant coach. And then if there's other discussions that need to be had, we have those with the, with the assistant coach who would bring them in. But predominantly it's with the head coach evaluating their assistants. And then we talk about that. And that's kind of the synopsis of it. We try to get that done more or less right at the end of the season. Part of that also is the awards banquets and making sure that all that's completed as well. Uniform inventories, those types of things. So that's kind of a quick synopsis of what kind of we're looking for in regard to the evaluations.
Thank you. On the first version that came out, there had not been what I perceived as an articulated uniform standard for evaluating coaches, particularly since different coaches don't always interact together, and there'd be possibly, if I understood it correctly, different supervisors conducting the evaluation. We wanted something uniform. And you did send us 3 documents, one entitled Groton Coach Evaluation,
Yep.
one a CIAC sample of coaches' evaluations as adapted to Groton, and a third called GPS Athletic Head Coach and Assistant Coach Evaluation Form. So could you, as a matter of clarification, tell us, are all these 3 operative as a unit, or are they some of them just exemplative to give us background?
So part of this, I'm always looking for different ideas, different ways to evaluate, and I explored different schools and what they use for evaluation tools. So the first one that I sent you was the Groton Coach Evaluation. That is what I'm currently using right now. And how we evaluate our coaches. The second one that I had sent you was one that I used previously.
Which one is the previous?
The coaches evaluation form, Groton Public Schools, and had the school year right under that.
So this is the former form. Okay.
Correct. Yep. I felt like the one we currently using has more detail into it, more specifically. I felt like the first one was a little vague, so I was looking for more. So again, trying to improve that. I got this, and kind of put that together. So I think it was more specific. And then the last one I had sent you, the GPS Athletic Head Coach and Assistant Coach Evaluation. That was one in doing some research. I found I liked actually how it displayed the not evident, developing, proficient, and distinguished, kind of like we would use for a teacher evaluation. And it kind of had specific areas under, program culture, professionalism, knowledge, program development, the administrative part, and, kind of lists their goals. They would do their annual goal prior to the season. So I kind of was looking actually to move to that evaluation form. And you can see down the bottom, I put July 1st of 2025. As a possible movement to that. So again, I'm always trying to look for different ways to improve these. And I felt like this one I was actually really impressed with this format. So that's kind of why I sent you that, and something that I'm looking to do, I think.
Thank you. So I'd like to open this up to discussion to the members. Ian and Andrea, if you have any comments.
Mark, did you look at, I guess I'm supposed to raise my hand.
Mhm.
Have you looked at the teacher evaluation and administrator evaluations, the way they're approached? And did you incorporate any of those ideas into this?
I actually did not. in the previous evaluations that I did, it's more specific to coaching and those types of things. And I think the setup, and when I look at other districts and the evaluation tools that they use, and I said this to Susan the other day, I feel like our evaluation that we use are much greater than what I've seen. So I felt like what I've, shared with you guys, at least the last, the current one and the one I'm looking to add, I feel like those are far greater evaluation tools than I've seen in a lot of districts. So I feel pretty comfortable with what we're using. And I feel like it kind of outlines what we're looking for in our coaches.
Yeah, they're pretty
And-
specific and in depth.
Right.
As I look today, yeah.
But again, I'm open to, always making them better, different ideas. So, that I'm not opposed to anything either. So,
Mhm. Okay.
Ian? Well, yeah, I think maybe he stepped away for a second, so I'll throw in a couple of.
Yeah, go ahead. I'll chime in after you. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. Well, first of all, thanks for the clarification on the forms, and I think you're moving in the right direction. I, like Andrea, think maybe there's some elements of the current form. I like the idea of scoring.
Mhm.
Particularly if, basically as I understand what you're doing it in your key definitions, basically exemplary is the 76th quartile, the top quartile, proficient is the second quartile, et cetera. So it's pretty
Right.
clear where one stands on it. The question is, how do you determine the overall thing? We have a number of categories. I think you have 5 sections. Are you going to add up the scores for all of, if you continue to use this form or some version thereof, would you add up all the scores and come up with an average, treating each section of equal value? Or perhaps one section is of greater value in your opinion, and you'll need to have some kind of adjusted form. But we're never going to get perfection, even though that's what we're trying to pursue. But the clearer it is to the employees of what's expected of them, and we'll come to PD in just a minute, we avoid any possibility of somebody saying, well, in this sport, they did it that way. In this sport, they did it this way. And we just don't need that complication in our lives.
Right. No, I mean, it's the same evaluation for every coach. So there's consistency with that for sure. But, and that's honestly, I read your comments in that email, and I know you're like, well, what defines exemplary? So that's why I kind of started moving to the newer version that I provided. I felt like it clearly states what distinguished would be, it clearly states what proficient would be, developing and not evident. So I took what you said into consideration, and I said, you know what, I think by moving it toward this, it's pretty evident, what each level is, I guess you could say, whether if they're distinguished, then obviously they're doing these things. If they're developing, then they're meeting some of it, but they're not. They're doing some things, but not all things. So that's kind of why I started looking at this new this new form here that I presented or that I shared with you. And I actually think it clearly states, and there's really no gray area, what each standard, I guess you could say, outlines.
It actually does match up with the educator eval very nicely.
Yeah.
I think it does. I'm sorry, let me get Bev, oh, actually, Ian, you're up next, and then Bev, unless you want to let Bev go first, Ian, I don't, whatever you guys want. Okay, Bev, you give it a crack.
Thank you. Mark, how often do you do an evaluation on your coaches? And my second question is the culture and climate. How do you go about evaluating that?
So formal evaluations are done annually. It's after every season, they're all evaluated. So in regard to coaching climate, I don't, You're talking about it as a whole, individually, you know, I don't know.
Yeah, how do you go about it? It says stakeholders feel the value and that included in the program. Now, how do you know how the stakeholders are feeling? Do you talk to the team people? Like if you're evaluating the basketball coach, do you talk to the players? If
I
the
think
football,
I see what you're saying. I mean, I attend many practices, games, so I feel that, you know, and watch the interactions and things like that. Like I have a pretty good pulse on um, each individual program and those coaches, and I talk to kids a lot as well. So I, you know, and assistant coaches. So I feel based on those types of things, I can pretty much give a pretty accurate um, representation of what the culture and climate is of that program.
and is it mandatory that the coaches do fundraising, or is that an optional thing?
No, I mean, they don't have to do that. You know, as you provide each program with a certain amount of money, if they're looking to get more or whatever it may be, you know, that would be something that they would have to do in order to, you know, whether it was new uniforms or the, you know, coaching apparel, you know, not coaching apparel, but like, you know, for example, in the sport of baseball, you know, the cost of baseballs now are astronomical. So in being purely honest with you, the amount of money that we have budgeted pretty much covers the cost of baseballs. So anything beyond that, that program would have to fundraise if they're looking for whatever it may be. So, you know, we can go with the bare bones minimum, and some teams do that, and other teams want more and extra, and they fundraise to do those things. So,
And then my last question, and then I'll let somebody else go. Character development. When you say they have a plan, do you check these plans that they have? It says like has a minimally developed plan for daily, weekly, monthly character development of all athletes in the program. Is that something you check and make sure that they have?
I think it's, yeah, in speaking with the coaches, and I know some coaches have different themes for every week, whether they're talking about, you know, perseverance or, you know, whatever, I'm trying to think of whatever, leadership, whatever it may be. Other coaches, you know, they choose to mix that in throughout the course of their practice plans or throughout the course of their season. Some of our coaches have leadership programs where they meet with the kids during the summer to kind of enhance those leadership skills for those teams. So I would say that each program has somewhat of a different type of character development program that they offer their student athletes.
Are these plans written or are they in the coach's head?
Um, no, they're shared with the kids. I mean, it's nothing formal that we have to do. You know, we encourage it, but it's not something that's specific.
So when you say not specific, it doesn't have to be written. Is that what you mean?
Correct. Yep. It could be, you know, after a game, you know, maybe a hypothetical, you know, maybe there was a poor display of sportsmanship, and that might be an emphasis at the practice or the game the next day. So, you know, that would be some form of a character development that a coach may use.
So how do you, as an athletic director, evaluate a coach on that if it's in their head? And
I think through discussions and in communication, which I have with them. I mean, like I said, I talk with these coaches on a daily basis, you know, especially in season. So I have a pretty good handle as to what is going on a daily basis.
thanks.
Ian,
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so just to follow up a little bit on what Bev was talking about, and I guess when reviewing the documents, I was just looking for something, and this also ties back into email that I received from a fellow board member. But as far as like goals and objectives, is there a section on the mission statement that goes over goals and objectives for the athletic programs? Is there a common theme? I mean, as far as like what Bev was saying about character development, it's something that emphasizes how that's done and what methods are embraced and supported and encouraged.
So each coach prior to the season sets a goal and goals, for their team. And I know each team does that individually. I know that when I meet with a coach in the preseason, they set their goals for the season as well. So, that's kind of our starting point.
And would you say that there's like any sort of universal goals that transcend across? I mean, as far as like all across all sports, all athletic clubs and activities, along the lines of character development, sportsmanship, that sort of thing. Is that emphasized and encouraged?
Yeah, I mean, that's always a point of emphasis during our coaches meetings that we have in the preseason. Sportsmanship's obviously our top, one of our top priorities, whether it's home, away, practice, game, whatever it may be. We want to be a positive representation of Groton Public Schools, Fitch High School, Groton Middle School, whatever it may be, at all contests. So, that's something that we take seriously, and that, we have different, sometimes we recognize our officials, throughout the course of the season to display sportsmanship. We've done other things to support other schools within our conference, and that ties into also the character development and things like that. So, that's with every program. Every program, I think each sport differs a little bit. So I wouldn't say necessarily, the basketball program goal may be different than the soccer goal, so, and I think it's based on, the coach's kind of perception of what they're trying to accomplish, whether they have a younger team, a more mature team, whatever it may be. So I think the goals based on each team are different.
Got it. Understood. Would you be open to inserting some things that maybe are more like universal or more sort of like holistic approach to like that would apply to any team, any season?
Yeah, I mean, and that would be something that, in talking with our coaches, that could be a seasonal thing, and I would be open to that. I think, at our preseason meeting, that might be something I could establish, with let's just use the fall season, for example. If we as fall coaches decided that these are 3 goals as a fall, athletic staff that we'd like to establish for that fall season, yeah, I would be open to that for sure.
I think, Ian, may I? I think Ian was getting at something else. If I'm mistaken, Ian, just cut me off, okay? In our communications, we talked about mission and goal statements. And because it was not articulated in the initial draft that you sent, and you sent me back the mission and goal statements that you have in the department.
Right.
Is that what you're referring to, Ian? An articulated
yes,
mission and
yes.
goal statement?
Yeah. I think something like that, would be interesting to develop. And it's not necessarily anything that could be like pulled out of like anything like carbon cookie cutter type style. Like I think it might be something kind of be bounced back and forth once or twice. But yeah, I think a holistic development approach would be.
And those that I shared with you are the ones that I created those recently, so I just haven't really put those into play. So if that's something that you're looking for me to add, I have no problem doing that.
Okay.
An element that I see, and maybe in your program, I just didn't see it, okay, is professional development. And it would occur to me that as part of the professional development, that at the beginning of each year, each coach would get this just annual 2026, 27, 2034, 35 season. These are the department mission statement, or maybe it's a goal statement. And these are the specific things we're liking you to do. Here are the standards by which you're going to be evaluated at the end of the season. So they have that at the beginning of the season. So nobody can say, Nobody told me about that. Give it to them up front. Develop whatever you consider, because this is not a part of policy. This is, I think, an operational thing. But I think as a policy, I'd like if the staff is going to be evaluated, they should know the basis upon which they're going to be evaluated. That's part of their professional development.
Yep. No, and to answer your question, I honestly do that already. I have a folder with them shared of all our coaches' resources that we utilize, and all the evaluations are in there. We have a preseason meeting with our coaches prior to the start of every season, and we go over everything from academic goals to sportsmanship to the evaluation plan. They set their goals during those meetings, so that's followed with every preseason meeting that I have with just the coaches.
I haven't seen a regulations to them. I'm presuming there are no regulations at this point. And I guess I would ask you and Susan to get together and say, some of these things that we're talking about that are not policy, they're operations. Would it be useful under the rubric of regulations, even though they're not regulations, they're just kind of implementation strategies, if you will, to articulate that? And let's see. Andrea, you have your hand up.
I do. Mark, help me understand something that you said. Maybe I'm just not getting it. You use the word sportsmanship, and I would think that would be the and character development and a humanitarian development. I would think that would be the purpose of having athletics at all. So why would the soccer goals be different from the football goals, or the spring from the fall? I don't get that. Maybe I'm just not understanding what you meant.
No, that's a good question. I think, each team, like I said, each team based on their, what they have in their program, for example, like if obviously, is a realistic, goal of win a state championship, is that, state championship or bust? I don't believe that defines success. There's plenty of teams that have had success that have not won a state championship, so I think, I do think that how we would define sportsmanship and those types of things and setting goals for each team, I think as a whole, and I can say this confidently, that, each team, when we meet, their first goal is, we want to win our first game. That's important. We want to get that. The second goal would be, probably to win our division. And then the third goal to qualify for the state tournament. And, so I would say that's a uniform goal for every athletic team, no matter season, level, whatever it may be. So that part of it's definitely uniform. I do think, you have some teams that have stronger leadership than other teams. So trying to develop leadership skills, sportsmanship skills, those are all things that, every team obviously strives for. So there are certain things, yes, we could be consistent with throughout the course of our 30, 31 athletic teams. But, when I think of each team, I think of the makeup and the climate of each team, and kind of as a former head coach, how I would, my goal as maybe a football coach may be different than a soccer coach, to be
Okay,
honest.
I don't get it.
Well, I think,
I mean, when you're, I'll be quiet. You talk.
no, that's fine. No, and it's about, program development and where your program is at a certain point in time. If for example, if our soccer program is very successful, my goals may differ than a team maybe that struggles or has struggled. So our goals may differ a little bit based on that. I don't know. It's hard to explain, I guess, but each team in my mind has a little different, like I said, you might have a younger team. We have some teams that had one senior. So that team, in my mind, is more a developing team, and they're going to work to build those skills. Whereas, because of that point, whereas if I had a heavy senior class team, my goals, I think, would be even higher. So I think it differs based on each team, to be honest.
I see. So I guess what you and I look at goals in a different way. I look at athletic goals as being that character development. But you're looking at, now that I'm listening to you, I'm hearing it. Yeah, you're looking at maybe the state championship or at least winning our first game.
Right. I
I
mean,
didn't
some
think of it in
consistent,
those terms. Yeah.
the consistency thing though that you're mentioning, like an academic goal would be consistent. We want all our kids to remain eligible. We want to support them. Want to make sure they're going to study hall. Like those are all things that every team does. So I guess to answer that, hopefully that answers part of that question. And that is a consistent thing for every athletic team that we have here.
Okay. Thank you.
Beverly?
Thank you. Mark, can you give me an example of what kind of professional development the coaches go to other than going for CPR and first aid?
Sure. Some coaches, there's different clinics offered throughout, whether it be the state out, there's some offered in Newport, there's some offered in Massachusetts. So, some of our coaches do take advantage of those things. There are some offered at the casino. So there's different, I would say, coaching, professional developments for each sport that are offered, all across the state, whether New England, so be it.
Is there a certain requirement that they have to have X amount of hours in professional development, or do you just leave it up to the coach and if they don't go, they don't go, and some do? Is there a standard?
I think it's encouraged. I think, some sports, there really isn't much professional development locally. We do utilize too the NFHS, or excuse me, National Federation. There's different kind of character things that are offered to that we have our coaches do, if they're looking to enhance that piece of it. But in regard to like coaching and X's and O's and those types of things, there are things offered or clinics offered throughout New England that our coaches do utilize.
So how do you evaluate the coaches on standard 3 professional learning?
But I would encourage them. We do have a bunch of local colleges in the area, so sometimes our coaches will go and meet with, maybe the Coast Guard coach or a college coach, and we consider that professional development. Also, meeting with colleagues, coaches from, other teams within our conference or in our state. That sometimes you can come up with ideas too. So, when we communicate that, what are you doing for professional development? What are you looking to do? Can I support you? Those are things that we do discuss.
Thank you.
So if I'm understanding, Mark, while we do work on a whole bunch of items, character development, much of the focus is skills development and X's and O's, if you will. So I'd like to turn to a policy that they have at West Point, Annapolis, New London, and in Colorado, our service academies. Their academic standards are that every student recites in every class. Everybody participates at least at a level. And I'm thinking about what I've observed in my generation, my kids' generation, my grandkids' generation. We have students who are very good at X's and O's and are not the greatest players in their sport, but they give all their heart. And they sit on the bench maybe 3 years before they finally make the varsity. Would you give some reflection? I don't think we need to put it in policy now, but give some reflection on whether we might consider a policy in the future that sets a minimum standard for student participation in interscholastic sports. Whereas whether it's Tommy or Sally, Kanisha, Dewan, it doesn't matter. If they're giving their heart and working, they know they're going to be in a play in at least 3 quarters, not academic quarters, game quarters, or 5 quarters, or 2 quarters. I leave the details to you so that they really build this feeling of bonding with the team on a very consistent basis, even to the point that if somebody who's weak goes onto the football line, The other football players don't look at him as a weak sister, but look at him as a team member, and we just got to put out that much more to get this thing. And the coach will determine when the right time, but there's a spirit of participation that all kids really get to play if they're really on the team. I'm not sure I've articulated that well, but I think you get the drift of what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's where a lot of our sub-varsity programs come in, which allow those, the kids who are working hard and to give them an opportunity to, participate and play whatever the sport may be. One of the things that we are consistent with is any senior that, is in a program, they do earn a varsity letter.
Mhm.
So that is something that, I don't know how you perceive that, but that's something that we've adopted as a an athletic department, that any senior on any sports team earns a varsity letter regardless of the amount of playing time they earn or whatever it may be. So but I don't know if, like I said, I think the sub varsity sports are for those kids or those student athletes who are developing and trying to fine tune their skills. The varsity level, I think is that's more for um, the ones who are probably at a little higher level, and that's kind of, I think, how it's perceived.
Well, I would just hope you'd give some consideration within levels, so that whether it's at a junior varsity or a varsity level, that the kids at that level get a certain minimum amount of time on the field in an interscholastic game as a way of building this sense of teamwork, that they're not just sitting on the bench. So I don't think that needs to be a policy, but I'd love you to reflect on that.
Yep.
Anybody else want to have any suggestions for modifying this? I think I've heard us say maybe strengthen the articulation of the professional development. Maybe I've heard to move towards your new form, but involve some kind of data-based evaluation, maybe putting numbers on some of this and setting it by quartiles again, so you can have however you want to frame it, they can still have an overall evaluation based on some numeric particulars across the form. Does anybody have pleasure on making any amendments, changes,
well-
votes? Ian?
I don't know. I mean, I guess I just want to check in on the process. Are we at the point where we're looking to edit this, or are we looking to pass it as a first read, or is this just a check-in? What's the intended outcome of this meeting and this agenda item?
But that's a good question, Ian. I can give you, my hope was that we would have a first reading and gather from this first reading, we can bring it to the board and say, this is a first reading. We do want to, we've asked administration to look at X, Y, and Z and come back to us. We have some more work to do on it, but if you feel we've moved along far enough to justify a first reading, I would hope we would do so. If we've not gotten that far, I'm more than willing to table this to the next meeting, because we've already done about 45 minutes and we have another 8 items to go.
Well, all things being what they are, I would be in favor of passing this as a first read, because we've had a good dialogue here. I think, it sounds like, the athletic director is going to take some notes and come up with some ideas on his end to make some revisions based on the commentary here. But I think there's also great value in getting it up to board level so that the full board could have some input too. That could also be done in an amount of time that the athletic director could take those notes into account as well before we see this again.
Beverly, you're. Isn't technology a bear?
Okay, thank you. So there's no policy. Is this a new policy or is this a existing policy?
To my knowledge, it's a new policy.
Oh, this is a brand new policy.
Susan,
It's
would you chime
green.
in?
It's green. I think that means it's new.
Okay, so we didn't have a policy before this, Susan? I thought,
Oops.
we-
Mark, are you there?
Yes,
Did you have a policy before?
I've always followed this policy that's written here.
That, because it looks like a K policy to me.
Yeah, I mean, this is what I've always followed. So to me, this is no different than what we're currently doing anyway.
Because I do not recall
Yep.
having found this policy in our policy manual,
all right, so this is a brand new policy.
to the best
Yeah,
of
but I
my
think this is
knowledge.
what he's been working off of, but I don't think we have ever adopted it. Is
Okay.
that right, Mark?
Yeah, no, I mean, the timeline and everything, it's a state policy. So this is exactly what we've been, at least I've followed the state policy since the beginning, 14 years ago. So it really hasn't changed in my mind. So this is just something I think that we're looking to adopt, correct?
Mhm.
So this
Yep.
looks like the state, if I'm hearing you correctly, this reflects the state policy.
Yep, just a timeline of, every coach is evaluated annually, and then it gives you, kind of goes through the process and, in regard to days, what the next steps would be, those types of things. So I think what we have in here in the green writing, that's the, state policy. I mean, that's out there. So, and this is the same that other districts follow this as well.
So this is a state policy. This policy didn't come from CABE? I'm confused.
Well, the timeline is a state policy. Like it says in here, every coach is evaluated annually. Talks about the non-renewal days and within the 90-day window, and the coach has 10 days to appeal that. So I think that's all stated in here.
So Bev, I think what I will do, if you all agree, is I will give Jody at CABE a call and ask him to send me a copy of whatever they have for P 4115.3 that we would be able to look at when we review it again.
Okay, thank you.
So I would like to entertain a vote on a first reading, but I would like to suggest what I think I'm hearing is the consensus of the group, is that you prepare, I don't think these are really regulations, but call it regulations, but have administration prepare guidelines that would include what professional development would consist of, that would include whichever form you adopt, but maybe melding the two forms to include a scoring system. Use your new form. I like your new form, but it doesn't have a scoring system to ensure equity across people and sports, and meld the two. Have I missed anything that other members wanted to see included in these guidelines? That's administration. We don't do that stuff, but we're giving our input.
I like the suggestion of the goals.
Good.
Right. Yeah, I was gonna say maybe developing some draft universal goals and objectives that could apply to all athletics. Focus on more specifics of character development and positive atmospheres, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think Mark is in response to my initial letter to him, he shared some of what he was doing. So I think he's well on his way to having something.
So the mission statement, the vision statement, and those types of things are things that you're looking for as well, correct?
Yeah. I don't know that goes in our policy. It would go in your guidelines.
But that
Yeah,
would
regulations.
kind of tie into the, our goals and what our mission is and that type of stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
We also have a portrait of a graduate that goes for all kids in our district and could go universally through sports as well.
Yep.
Okay. So if we're all on the same page, I would ask if there's anything any of the members want to contribute before we take a vote. Seeing nobody rushing to contribute anything at the moment, I will ask all those in favor of passing 4115.3 as a first reading to go to the board for approval, with the understanding that we'll also see when it comes back to us something under the guidelines/regulations. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Ian, are you still with us?
Oh, sorry, that didn't come through. I said aye.
Okay, so we are passing this 3-0 and moving on. And my real deep appreciation to Mark, you responded to my questions with alacrity and clarity. Both things I hope sports gives to all of our kids.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. You
Thank
guys
you,
have a-
Mark. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay, I'm going to need to take a 90-second break. I'll come back in 90 seconds.
I'm gonna feed my cat.
Okay. Okay, I know the members of the committee are here. Susan, are you, is it Bev, Susan, Ray, you're all here?
We're here.
I'm here.
Thank you. Okay, we're reconvening. Thank you. We are now working on P 3160, transfer of funds between budget functions. I've asked, or Ian has offered to post it. My understanding is that from the Board of Education March meeting discussion was that there was discussion on, the only part that was a question at the meeting sent back to us was the phrase at the next regular meeting or 36 hours. My assessment, and I'm seeking validation on whether I assessed correctly or incorrectly, was that while there was not unanimity of opinion, there seemed to be a clear majority in favor of having some time frame. So my question to start out the discussion before I ask if there's a motion is, does this correspond to what the other policy committee members and Bev heard at the last March meeting?
No. I'm opposed to any kind of time frame.
Okay. I was asking whether the fact that there was not unanimity, but that there was a majority of the board that felt that some time frame was needed. And of course, we're going to discuss it.
I think you're correct. You're correct, Matthew.
Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Matt, yes, definitely.
Okay.
That was my
So-
memory as well, but everyone's entitled to their own, personal perspective, but the overall consensus, my
So
take
would
was,
somebody, for the purposes of discussion, like to move P 3160 transfer funds between budget functions as business/non-instructional operations?
so moved, Thomas.
Motion by Thomas. And since I'm going to guess that Andrea has some concerns, I won't ask her to.
I thought I heard you say, was there unanimity? And I said,
No, there was not
not my-
unanimity. No,
that
I
was
said
not
there-
my understanding.
No, okay. What I
Right.
meant to say, I'll read down, was not unanimous, that the discussion was not unanimous, but there seemed to be a clear majority in favor of having some time frame. That's all I wanted to know, is if I was completely off the mark on that perception.
Okay.
Okay, so I will second this motion and begin for discussion, anybody who wants to it.
Oh, I'll jump in, I guess. I'll just say, like, I'm in favor of some sort of time frame. I think it's reasonable. Again, this is not to this is just notification of the emergency and the fact that a transfer is either underway or impending or needed. It doesn't have to interfere with actual emergency response. So I'm open to having it kick back to like 48 or 72 hours. But either way, I think it's well within reason to expect some kind of notification to the chair, which then could be fanned out to the board, that something's coming down the pipeline as far as that goes, prior to the next regular meeting, unless the next regular meeting is within that time frame.
Okay.
I
Bev?
just, I'm sorry, Beverly, go.
I would be in favor of, I read in another board's policy book that they have, and I think this was good, 2 weeks. The superintendent has 2 weeks to notify us and has to give us a full report at the next regular board meeting.
Interesting. Andrea?
I just think that there should be no time limit, and it should be an expectation that there would be a full report, so.
So I like
Right.
Beverly's, I would support Beverly's, oh, I'm sorry, Ian, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, not to be snarky, but expectations, basic policy is just expectations put into writing.
Okay, I would be supportive of Bev's approach. My personal inclination would be if there's an emergency, the chair needs to know about it ASAP. But if Bev is satisfied and thinks the future chairs would be satisfied with a 2-week period, that's fine.
I mean, because we are hoping that if there's a true emergency, that the superintendent will tell us right away. I mean, and I think in the past, the superintendent has told us right away if there's a true emergency. If there's a fire at a school or evacuation or a lockdown, I think Susan has told us right away when this has occurred.
As soon as
So-
I know something, I tell you.
I don't think this is a Susan question. I don't think this has anything to do with Susan.
Well, superintendent in
I
general.
think the superintendent, because I have
Okay.
heard that in Groton's past history, and certainly in other school districts, there have been times and superintendents who have not been as assiduous as Susan. And that's the purpose of the policy.
Okay.
And yeah, if I could just jump in again, I'd say, again, let's just reiterate, like, this is supposed to be a policy that transcends anybody that may be on the board or anybody that may be serving in the administration. So we're trying, and again, policies, in my mind, policies are expectations put into writing. So I don't think there's any harm if that's the general drift, that we would hope that the superintendent, whoever it may be, would inform the board in a short amount of time as to like emergencies that are significant enough that's going to require transfers of funds between budget functions, then that's something that should be put into writing and say that, well, the expectation is that it'll happen within 36, 48, 72 hours, whatever that time frame is. But I think a couple of days is more than enough. As we can see, like, it has not hampered our current superintendent now in notifying us very quickly as to, like, when things pop up, we do get notified. All I'm looking to do, I guess, all I'm advocating for is that we codify that, in the policies moving forward, so that future boards and future superintendents, will adhere to the same standards that we've enjoyed thus far with Susan.
Mhm.
So would somebody like, Bev, go ahead. Would somebody like to make an amendment or move what we currently have, whatever your pleasure is?
I could go down to a week. Like that the superintendent will notify the board in a week, at least within a week, and give us a full report at the next regular board meeting.
But this is not aimed that way, Bev, with due respect. I think it's to give notice to the chair.
Okay,
ASAP,
within the week.
Within a week.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, if that's what you want, if that's what the group wants, I'm not saying we should, would somebody make a motion to amend to delete the highlighted phrase and substitute something else that you want?
I feel like we're in an auction.
But I still think.
I'm trying
Yeah,
to
I
move
mean,
along without being too directive.
I would, for the sake of just kind of expediting this back to the board, and so we get the full board's read on it, I'd be in favor of putting a week in now, just to kind of get this passed as a second read out of committee, and then we can kind of, do what we have to do as a full board, because 72 hours versus anything, 84 versus 96, then, what are we doing? Hey, we are at an auction. So, I would say I'd take the week and, just to kind of get back to the full board and then we
So,
can just
am I
come
hearing
to a
you say
consensus.
to delete the highlighted phrase and insert the words within 2 weeks?
No, within a week.
Within a week, excuse me. within
Bev's
a
most
week.
recent offer was a week.
Yeah.
Okay,
So I'm gonna meet her halfway.
okay.
I'm gonna
Um,
vote for it, but I'm just not gonna move it.
so I'm gonna so I'll move that we strike at the next regular meeting or 36 hours and replace it with within 1 week.
Well, Ian, suppose the next regular meeting is before a week.
Well, then that's within 1 week.
Okay.
Within means inclusive.
Yeah, I know what that means, but
So it could always be sooner.
okay. That's good. That's good then.
Okay, is there a second to the amendment? I'll second the amendment. So the motion to amend is Thomas Schulman. Is there discussion on the motion to amend? Hearing no discussion on the motion to amend, to delete the phrase at the next regular meeting or 36 hours and to replace it with the words within 1 week, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
So I'm seeing all in favor. So we have passed the motion to amend 3-0. Would somebody like to move the amended motion P 3160? The motion to adopt the amended, amended
So moved.
3160 for second reading to the board. Did you say you were doing that, Ian?
Ian said, yeah, he's
Oh,
moving.
yes, I'm so moved. So moved. Yeah.
Okay,
I'll second it.
Ackerman, okay. Is there any discussion? Hearing no Bev, did you want to say something?
Oh, no.
Okay, hearing nothing, I will ask for a vote on adopting the amended P 3160 to be sent to the board. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. We have adopted the amended P 3160. Okay, we are now on item 3200. And I've been struggling to figure out exactly what to do with this because I'd asked, there was some discussion on the intersection or conflict or consistency between 3320 and 3200. So I guess we're going to just act on 3200. Then, and Ian also sent a transmittal letter to me on the 3rd of April with you correct me if I got this wrong, Ian, okay? A alternate version to what we have submitted on our packet. So would somebody like to, for the purposes of discussion, make a motion about P 3200 as it was sent in the packet?
I move, we, whatever we're doing, accepting it or whatever, I don't know what the verb is, 3200. So
And Ian, did you want to
Matthew,
second?
you help me out there.
Okay, motion to adopt P 3200. Ian, did you want to second that?
I will for discussion purposes, but under
Okay.
objection or duress.
If you're not comfortable with it, I'll second it.
Well, no, we need to handle this one way or the other, and I'd rather just talk about it now. So
Okay.
I'm not going to try to quibble or
Okay.
play any games.
Okay, so we have it moved and seconded to adopt P 3200. We are open for discussion.
So my knowledge is that this is a CADE policy and it is named income with P3200. So I think in the past it had been named something different. But I think we looked at the CADE policy P3200, and just followed that. And it's labeled income. The one that Ian is showcasing has a different name entirely, so I don't know if it comes with a different number for CADE,
Okay.
but I'll let,
Um,
you know. So
Well,
I
if
think
I
this
could just
one
jump
was
in and
different.
explain,
Yeah,
what I've projected up on the screen now. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
All right, so this is what's in the current Board of Education policy book. And this is the document that the Ad Hoc Budget Procedure Committee was attempting to revise. And that was the draft that we submitted under this code. Now, what apparently seems to have happened is that sometime in the past 35 years, this was
changed.
published in 1990. Somehow, I think CABE changed their coding matrix so that their 3200 now, if you go to their reference documents, pops up as income and does not relate to transfer of funds between categories. So while I'm fine looking at the P3200 income idea at some point in the future, the impetus coming out of the Ad Hoc Budget Procedure Committee was to focus on the document that we see before us now. Now, if that revision needs to include a revised coding to match the current model, then that's something else we should discuss under this heading. But it was not the intent of the Ad Hoc Budget Procedure Committee to have the income policy under review. The point was to have the transfer of fund between categories under review and revision.
Okay.
Oh, how are they the same number?
Say again?
How are they the same number? P3?
Well, I just explained that. I think I was just trying to say that this is what is in our policy document now, what's on the screen. And as you can see, it's published in 1990, or was adopted in 1990.
Yeah.
So I think the 3200 coding was used in 1990 to define this sort of policy. And since this policy hasn't been touched in 35 years, you know, at some point, CABE's recommended catalog of policies changed their coding matrix and shifted the transfers all to somewhere else, probably more the 3160 camp that we just handled for funds between function codes. It's probably some subsidiary of that.
Can I suggest a workaround or a potential workaround, Ian? Tell me what you think about it. If we were to tonight, and I'm just feeling my way, if we were to adopt the proposed P3200 as P3200-A, and then we were to look at the existing policy P3200 and readopt that as P3200B, get rid of the old policy 3200 because it's misnumbered. I would immediately call Jody. Well, it won't be tomorrow. I'll call Jody and ask him what the categorization for transfer of funds between categories is now, and if there is such a policy, could she send me the sample policy? Would that move us forward? Because I'm hearing what you're saying, which is reasonable. We do want to have a policy on transfer of funds. We do want to have a policy on income. I don't see us resolving it tonight, honestly.
Understood.
But
Yeah.
I'm not trying to play a game of delay. I just want to find a process that's going to get us there efficiently.
Well, I do think you're right that we need to ask CABE, like, is there such a thing now and what is it coded?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, right.
I think that would be a fair approach, Matthew. I'd be on board with that. I think that's a good way to move forward and kind of.
I just don't think we
No.
should number it A and B, because if 3200 is no longer the number, I think we need to look at what is the CAPE policy, what does it look like?
Well, the
it's
reason
trying to do the
I
same.
said 32A and B, Susan, is if we adopt this as 3200, the income one.
Mhm.
That eliminates the old policy, and we have nothing about transfer of funds in our policy manual. And I really don't want to see us, walk in the world naked.
Well, we just did 3160 between functions.
Between functions, yes, and
Yeah.
and the way that the 3200 as proposed by the Budget Procedure Committee was was for looking at object codes and line items.
Well, I think
So-
I'd like Ray to speak up about that too, and what that would do to
Well,
the business office.
sure, at the
Yeah.
at the appropriate time, I think that'd be fair. But right now, I just want to kind of get clear on what are we discussing right here and now? And I think what Matthew proposed as a way to move forward to get some clarity from CABE as to what the proper coding is. And as long as it's clear that, we have the transfer between functions code. That one's 3160. We just passed that as a second read out of committee back to the board. What we're looking for is clarity on if we wanted to, and that's a big if. I want to put in there as a big if. If we wanted to put some guardrails on how we transfer between object codes and line items, what code would we use for that? For what policy code would we use for that? And is there a template out there that we
I would
could
further
build a
add-
model off of?
I would further add, Ian, that while I would personally be supportive of stricter language on the object codes, I have real reservations about the line items. This is not the
Mhm.
moment to discuss those.
I do too. And I don't have an,
Right,
and
that,
we're
and
having,
that,
And
and that's
gonna
all
have
well and
the
good to have those
business
concerns, but
manager too.
I'd rather have that discussion when we're explicitly talking about that policy. And not having this
Or
duality.
give some thought in the intervening week, Ian, about dividing them up and proposing two policies, one about object codes and one about line items, so that at the end of a meeting, if we're not resolved on both of them, we can at least get one of them through.
Well, to
Matthew,
my
can-
understanding, they're pretty much kind of the same thing.
Matthew,
no, they aren't.
But they're
Matthew, can-
different.
Matthew, can I make a suggestion?
Absolutely.
Okay. In light that we are soon going to have a business manager, I think anything that has to do with transfer of money or anything that has to do with the finance business office, that we wait until the new finance manager comes on board. I would not want to agree on any policy that affects their office until they're actually in that seat. And we're very, very close to getting a new finance manager by the end of, I don't know, a month. So I
We should know
would hold
something
off.
by the end of the week. We're hopeful.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I would hold off on any financial stuff until that person is in place.
So Matthew, with that being the case and that being the advice of the chair and the superintendent, do we want to just table 3200 and in all its forms?
I'm
Until we
willing
get more
to,
information?
I'm willing to do, is your hand up, Bev, still?
No,
Okay,
sorry.
I'm willing to do that. I would also urge you to consider, Ian, I know your preference is to put object codes and line items in the same policy. And that's certainly your prerogative to propose that. Given the fact that there are concerns, could we
Understood.
get something? Why don't you write up
Got
3 versions? And
it.
please,
Understood. Yes. And I'll and
AB
yeah,
plus A plus B.
Sure. And we could maybe both reach out to Cabe and have or when you reach out to Cabe, if you want to patch me in on the conversation, so I could help kind of clarify what we're looking for, and we can get some advice and guidance on from them.
Well,
Directly.
what I understand that we're looking for is we're looking for policies that affect transfer funds between object codes and transfer funds between line items. Have I
Yes.
understood that? So
Yes.
that is what I'm tasked to do. If I don't do it, impeach me and suspend my salary.
And
No, I will
again,
do it. I will do it. I promise.
All right. Sounds good.
Okay, so
and
do I
I
hear a motion to suspend, to table P 3200 until the new business manager takes his/her seat?
So moved.
We need to have Andrea's, no, I'm sorry, I've got the process wrong. Andrea, would you, if Ian is in agreement, would you withdraw your motion to adopt P 3200? That's the right standard.
I move to withdraw, policy P 3200.
Okay. And Ian, are you in agreement with that?
Yes, I'm in agreement with that.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
3 in favor, none opposed, none abstaining. Now, would I have a motion to table
So moved.
P 3200 until business manager is seated?
So
Second.
moved.
Okay, so we have Thomas and Ackerman. Is there any discussion on this?
I think we've had it.
Okay, in which case, let us agree to vote in favor or against. All those in favor of tabling, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
3-0. That's wonderful. Okay, we're now moving on to old business on purchasing procedures. Ray, is that something that could be adopted now, or do you want us to hold off on this as well?
Let me take a look at it real quick here. Gotta turn pages, hold on.
Sure. Holy mackerel, we're going to get through this tonight, guys. It is now 7 o'clock. Are we willing to work till 8 o'clock?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I'm good with
This is decent the way it stands. It's not much changes from where Cabe was and things like that. So, and we're already doing 99.9% of this.
Okay, so
Wait a minute. I just got to Ian's page. Hold on. Yeah. Curveball. Gonna take a little more here. Hang on. What changes do you really want to make, Ian? What are you trying to do? Let me ask you.
Hold on one second. Let me get it up on the screen here and see. We're looking at 3320 or 3310. Sorry,
3320.
3320. All right, purchasing procedures. And this is the amended draft?
Yeah, and it's based on the CABE sample.
Yeah.
see, in looking at the version that you sent, Ian, which is not yet up on the screen, my read of it was that the last 3 paragraphs are operational stuff that would go into regulations. Not even speaking to the merits of them, but just it's the function of them. They're operational things.
Right.
You may disagree with me, but that was my read.
Ian, can you fix that?
Ooh, what
Matt-
happened there?
Hey, Matthew,
Yes,
can I again suggest that you wait until we get a new business manager,
As you
even for
wish.
this one?
if that's what you want, that's why I started with Ray to see what he felt, but sure.
Maybe he may.
Yeah, I'll just say that this is another draft that doesn't fully represent what the ad hoc budget procedure passed out of their committee.
What are they actually
So-
trying to do? Let me ask that. What's the ultimate goal?
honestly, like when I drafted this thing up, it was based a lot on some of your emails and suggestions from meetings when we talked about it. But this is not the ad hoc budget procedure committee version. There was another version that had a lot more regulation kind of written in there.
Some of what we spoke about at some of the meetings, I've got 20, 30, maybe 40 procedures we've written up. We've got other documents that we put together within the department to try to tighten up loose ends internally.
Got it. So maybe there's a way around this where we could have a general. Again, I do agree with the idea of maybe like we defer this until we get the new business manager on board. But in principle, just moving, how to approach it philosophically, I would say that I just would maybe like to take a look at that procedure manual, and that could probably satisfy a lot of the urges that or the desires of what was coming out of the budget procedure committee.
But I do think there's going to be a transition, and Ray is certainly willing to stay on to help with that transition so that the new business manager will have the work that's been done so far but I think to get her in the seat and, to be able to have that transition period will be important too. So that we, make this policy something that can last, maybe not 35 years, but, last a little.
So
That's,
let me,
that's a
let me,
good caveat.
let me.
I won't be back in 35 years.
I know.
Ian,
That would put me at 105. I
Oh,
don't think
boy.
so.
Can
Speak
I
for
just-
yourself.
younger than I am, my friend. So
Speak
Ian,
for
you said-
yourself.
Ian, you said a few minutes ago that one of the things that I heard you say, and maybe you didn't say it. I heard you say that one of the things the ad hoc committee did was want to discuss or see some regulations included. And-
Yes, yes,
Okay,
and actually a lot of the
let me
notes in that-
continue. Let me continue.
Oh, sorry.
Please. Personally, I think some of what you want to regulate is great. Some of what you want to regulate is not so great, but that's just a personal opinion. But regardless of whether we think a regulation is great or not, it belongs, in my humble opinion, in the regulations. And if it's not in, the problem with putting regulations in policy is that we cannot foresee future evolution of needs. We cannot foresee the future composition of the board or the administration. And what might make sense for this administration and this board at this time, putting it in policy really risks paralyzing an administration or board in the future. So if we want to have things in regulations, let's have a vigorous, really great discussion about the merits of each regulatory thing you want and communicate that to the administration and say, we really want you to address X, Y, and Z in regulations. They will then, out of the courtesy they have always shown under this administration, come back with regulations for our feedback. And tell me if I'm wrong, Susan, you will come back with the feedback and we will get another voice in this process. But I really don't want to gum up the works for future generations. We're not that smart.
Right, you're correct. And regulations belong to the superintendent, not to the board.
So give that some thought and meet with, chat informally with the other members of your ad hoc committee. I'm not opposed in any, I don't think this committee is opposed, or if Bev will allow it, to the regulations. I just want to see the way it's structured be sustainable over a long period of time.
Right, and to that end, I mean, I do agree that a lot of this gets very technical, and I appreciate your assessment of the situation there, Matthew. And I think that's a very succinct way to express the concerns of why we don't want to put too much detail into policy. And again, I would just say, like, the motivation behind the way we constructed this was based a lot on the conversations that we had at the time with Ray and a lot of the commentary, and there was a few emails back and forth as well that we lifted some language from. So a lot of this is very technical and definitely probably fits better for regulation or the procedure manual. So I would definitely look forward to the idea of trying to translate this. But this is this version that's on the screen now. This is what passed out of the Budget Procedure Committee.
But Ian, you know
So,
what, Ian, can I just say this?
I just wanted to share this to let you know that there was a difference. And I do agree overall with the approach of waiting for the new business manager to come on. And I do agree with the approach with like cutting this down to a point where, getting a lot of the regulation stuff out of here and put it into the appropriate place. I agree with that.
So, okay, I've got Bev and Andrea. I don't know who put her hand up first.
I did, but I want Bev to go.
Okay. I just want to get this straight, really. The purpose of the ad hoc committee, I went back and I looked at the minutes. The purpose of the ad hoc committee was to create a report and make recommendations to the full board with regard to budget preparation and presentation. It was not the purpose of the ad hoc committee to write policy.
I beg to differ on that.
I talked to Jay this afternoon about this.
No, we had this conversation last summer when I set up the agenda, and the mission statement on the agendas had to do with oversight as well.
Yeah, that wasn't what Jay said.
Well, that's what
put in
was documented,
oversight.
and I
You
have it
put
in
in
text, and I
oversight.
have it in email.
Please.
No, No,
Ian,
listen, like,
one
I
at a
know,
time,
listen,
one at
I
a
know,
time. Ian,
but
you will have your time, one at a time.
being mischaracterized.
No,
Ian,
I'm not.
one at a time. Beverly, you have the floor.
I'm not mischaracterized. I have the paper right here. June 20th at 6:30 p.m. Remote meeting. Charge of the ad hoc procedure committee. And then somehow that was the charge. And then somehow somebody at the next meeting put in oversight. That wasn't the original charge of the ad hoc committee, was not to change and write policy. It had to
Yeah,
do with
well-
budget. It didn't have to do with anything with the business office. It had to do with budget.
Well, that's not the conversations that I had with Jay.
Well,
And I have some of those via text as well as some emails. When we set up the agenda, yes, there was a draft of the agenda that went out that did not have oversight in there. And then, I expressed my concern with that, and I went back and forth with Joyce a few times on this as well. And we brought in Jay and we talked about it. And we
But it
changed
was
the
not
word.
voted, it was not voted by the board. I invite Bev and Jay and Ian to have a three-way conversation
yeah,
and figure
I
out
did
what
a
we agree.
conversation today with Jay about this because we don't have oversight of the business office. We only have oversight.
We have
of the-
oversight of the budget. The budget is our responsibility.
Yeah,
We're
but not,
liable
not,
if we
not
go over budget.
okay, but not how the business office operates. We have oversight of the budget, and that's why I let you have another ad hoc committee to have to make the budget book better. But we don't have oversight of how the business office operates, and that's what your committee went and did with all
Well,
these
listen, like
policy
we've
changes.
been doing this above the board and on the record the whole time. So if there's an objection about it back then it should have been voiced back then. But
Okay,
it
You
was
know what? I don't see this being a constructive
doing.
conversation
okay,
at this
I'm
point.
done. I'm done,
I don't
Matthew.
understand why this
We're
objection is
out of-
coming now
We're
in the
off.
late days. Like we've already been through a number of these
Point of order,
revisions.
we are discussing what we're going to do with P 3320. We are not discussing what the water that went through the turbine and over the dam. That water's down the stream, baby, okay?
All right, I hear you.
I'm not saying the arguments on both sides are without merit, but I am personally going to trust the judgment of the two chairs as to what was in the original charge, how it got changed, who agreed or didn't agree with it is it's above my pay grade.
Above mine too, Matthew.
All right.
Andrea,
Well,
you had your hand up.
My questions are very, very simple. I have actually, I think maybe you addressed it, Matthew, when you said, I think you said like, I was looking at buy the proper product for the proposed the purpose required and that those belong in regulations. Am I correct? Because I wrote down, how is it, not only is insulting, it's insulting, but I saw that it was part of CAVE. Okay. Where that came from, I have no idea. But is that what you're talking about when you're saying it belongs in regulations? Because it surely doesn't belong in
If you
policy.
could scroll up a little bit, Ian, scroll to the bottom of it. Thank you.
Maybe I'm
On the
looking at
comments, I'm looking at the fourth, 1, 2, 3, 4, the fourth paragraph. It says, it's the one that's in green under the black. A notice shall be sent. The strict notice needs to include the essential information. All of these are operational details, important operational details, but operational details, they're not
Right.
policy.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, that's one thing. And then I have a couple of other questions I'm just not clear on. One of them is, now maybe I'm not looking at the right,
Yeah,
I'm not looking at Ian's, I'm looking at the one that exists. And it says that
purchasing?
Mm.
purchasing, yes. And I'm looking at where it says, I think it's the 1, 2, 3 paragraph down on mine anyway. It says that purchases or contracts made outside of the approval of the purchasing process will not be the responsibility of the board. I don't know how anything that's done in our name is not in our responsibility. Now, maybe it's a part, it's time to sit somebody down and say, hey, you can't do this. But to say it's not our responsibility when it's done in our name, I don't understand that. And then, that's one. And then I see, and I've questioned this before, that's the very, very last thing before legal references.
Yeah, I'm in policy, you know.
You ready?
Okay.
Go ahead, Andrea.
Okay.
Well, we should let know Bev. I think Bev has a hot mic.
Oh.
I'm hearing some background noise.
To his committee,
Hey, baby, you're hot.
and then he added the word oversight.
Bev, we're hearing you.
I muted her.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so with the last thing, and I'm not sure what this means. So anyway, it says specifications governing materials are a joint responsibility of the teaching and learning department. When do we get such a thing? I mean, that's our mission, but when do we get a department? So that's, and I saw that in the other one as well. I saw that in Eden's version as well. I don't know what that means.
So I would
Those
be
are
open to a motion to table this until we have a new business manager. Would somebody like to make that motion?
me.
Okay. Ian, what's your thought?
Yeah, I moved to table this.
Second. Sorry, yeah.
Table
Yeah.
to,
Yeah, seconded.
table
Seconded.
until new business manager is on
Yeah.
board.
Ray
And
just
again-
sent, Ray
When
just
Bev-
sent us another one to look at, but that's for the future.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we can tell Bev when she comes back that we've doubled her salary.
And
Okay,
and again, I just want to reiterate that I'm in favor, like the ad hoc budget procedure committee revision that came out definitely was loaded with a lot of detail. And I'm in full agreement that a lot of that needs to be excised out and put into like regulation or procedure if there's not already parallel policies in place in those documents or parallel guidelines, I should say. You know, so I'd like to do a compare and contrast between
Okay.
all the documents when the time comes.
so I'm moving on to the new business items new business items A, B, and C with an observation before I ask for a motion. And if you don't agree with my observation, I know you will not hesitate to tell me. The reason we are looking at public complaints is, at this moment in time, is pretty clear to all of us. It doesn't need discussion. What we, in my humble opinion, I think we are premature. We are premature because we do not know the problem. We do not know with specificity the problems that we need to repair, if we need to repair any. And we will know those once the superintendent comes to a finding and the board is informed of the finding along with the discussion with our attorney, presenting his analysis and where we need to go. At
Right.
that point, if there will be issues to be resolved with the specificity of the problem at hand, and then there may or may not be need to identify processes that have failed us. And once we have identified those processes that may have failed us in the past, we'll be in a position to rectify them. But until we know what those problems are, we are premature in trying to rectify that which we do not know.
I agree.
Okay, whose hand was up first? Ian, was it you? Oh, okay, so I guess Andrea forgot to take her hand down.
I'm sorry,
Ian, Chip,
yeah.
floor is yours.
Who's up? I'm sorry.
You're up, Ian.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I'll just say that I can understand where you're coming from with that comment or those comments, I should say. But overall, like just in the time that I've been on the board, I already do have a number of concerns regarding some of these policies and things that I think we could polish up and tighten up. But I do understand that at this current moment, it seems like it's more reactionary, or it may seem to some that it is reactionary. I've been observing and taking notes on the stuff. I'm prepared to kind of have some commentary on it now, but you know, if you know, I'm not necessarily prepared to like, do a deep dive, and I definitely don't want to try to drag reluctant committee members along with me at this time. So, you know, we work on consensus as a board. We work as you know, we need majorities. So I don't want to, you know, rub people the wrong way. I'm prepared to discuss these things. I have some ideas to get things started and get lines of conversation and research going. But if it's the will of my fellow committee members to hold this until the next meeting, where we might have some more time and more information and more insight, I'm okay with that too.
Okay, thank you very much, Ian. Anybody else have any comments?
Yeah, I would like to hear what Floyd has to say before we do anything with this. I'm with you, Matthew, is what I'm saying.
I just don't want to conflate the specificities of one instance with the universalities of our process.
And there are a lot of things that I saw that were repetitions of, you know, we said the same thing in different policies and proposed policies.
Well,
Yeah.
if it's the will of the committee, I'll invite Ian or Andrea, if it's true to your heart, to make a motion to table policy 1312, 1312.3, and 1312.4 until the denouement, I should use an English word, until the resolution of current situations. Until we had a chance to speak to Floyd.
Yeah, so moved.
Okay, do I have a second? I'll be glad to second it if you're not comfortable doing that, Ian, no problem. So table until
I'm sorry, the timeline was a little unclear on me.
the
Sorry.
timeline in my mind would be the next regular policy committee meeting following Floyd's opinion given to the entire board. So
Okay.
at that point, there'll probably be some initial discussion, but that will be in a different type of setting.
And is that something we anticipate happening between now and next month?
Boy, I have no idea.
Well, that's my concern, I guess, is I don't want this to go
It's out
too
of
far and down the road.
Like many things in life, that one's beyond my control. Susan, do you have any insight as to when Floyd will be able to opine to the board?
So we're gonna try to get the final report to Floyd by the end of the week. I'm not sure what his week is like next week, but we are trying to get that all completed.
So we're looking at May, right? Before
Yeah.
May.
Well,
I-
yeah,
I-
the next our next
Right.
board meeting will be in May.
Well, you know, we could punt on this and table it to our next regular meeting. And if we haven't heard from Floyd by then, we can table it again if we need to.
I would be more comfortable with that approach, so we'd be that we're sure and confident that we're going to at least touch on it in some form
Well,
or
I think
fashion.
are you comfortable with that, Andrea?
Yes,
Okay, so we're tabling until the May meeting.
or
And-
before.
Or before, or, well, we're not gonna have another meeting this month unless it's an
Oh,
emergency
okay.
meeting, so.
Okay,
So we're moving to table, all three of them. Is that your intention?
My understanding was that, yeah, it's kind of a whole package because they
So
all are
13,
very
12.
similar and parallel. They all depend on
Plus
each other.
13, 12, 3,
Yeah. 13, 12 et al.
plus 13, 12, I don't speak French, 13, 12, 4.
Oh, that wasn't,
Yeah.
that may be French, but it's also
No, it's
legal
not,
speak.
it's Latin, it's Latin. I'm
Yeah.
just-
Well, either way, it's legal
You know
speak,
why.
meaning everything underneath that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I have a motion is by Andrea and seconded by, did you want to second that, Ian?
Yeah, I'll second it. Yeah.
Thomas?
Mhm.
Is there further discussion?
Not at this time. Not
All
for
those
me.
in favor of tabling the policies 1312, 1312.3, and 1312.4 until the May meeting, please indicate by saying aye.
I,
Aye. We move on to the referral list. I am going to ask for removal of my motion of my initiation in January 9th, 29, homeschooling. I just see our docket. I do not see any pressing issues that would force this discussion now, and we have too much on our plate. So if we free up some time, I may ask to put it on again, but I'm going to ask to have that removed.
Was that the homeschooling?
Yes.
Did you
Can
say?
you
Okay.
enlarge this, Ian? I can't see it. Can you enlarge? it?
Sure, yeah. Let me
Thank
see what I can do here.
Thank you.
Nope.
Oh, good, thank you.
How's that? Is that good?
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. You know, that was to discuss whether there was some opportunity to make certain things available to homeschoolers, and we've got other fish to fry.
Mhm.
Okay. Next month, next meeting, we will be discussing artificial intelligence. And then 13.12 and 13.4 on day completed, we'll put that on for the currently for the May meet and to the May meeting.
Well, yeah, so that 1015 referral was
Yes,
just looking at the anonymous complaint process. But now, like, yeah, so I think that referral and the one that we just looked at right now should all be completed together.
yeah, we've tabled that till next month.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, that they're all going to be combined. That obviously should not be separate.
Okay. Is there anything else that anybody on policy or Bev wants us to look at?
Seems like
safety.
that's gonna be a pretty full meeting, May,
Oh, yeah, they always are.
and especially with AI, we have lots to talk
Mm.
about.
And Susan's going to cater this for us. Okay, well, okay, so that's what we've done there. Do we have anything for the good and welfare of the committee?
Not at this time, not for me.
Andrea, you're up with your motion.
A motion to adjourn. For the
Woo!
good, the
So
good of
Second,
the
Thomas.
committee.
I want to really thank you. This was a tough meeting. Adrian, I want to particularly thank you for participating. I'm glad Bev was here, but it did freeze you out of being able to speak, so we wouldn't violate any regs. If you have anything you want to communicate to the chair, he is very willing to receive your call.
Well, thank you for having the meeting. I'm obviously didn't participate, but I appreciate listening.
Okay, so having had a motion on the table to adjourn, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. This meeting is adjourned with joy.
Good
Bye-bye.
night.
Good night.
Good night.